Hello everyone, my name is Bashar. I'm going to talk about the labor supply and the labor demand, welfare programs and work incentive, the effect of income assistance service such as aid to find female families with dependent children or temporary assistance for needy females has been anticipated on the job opportunities of recent since the days when the United States declared a war on poverty in the mid 1960s. The belief that welfare is not working and that the so-called war on poverty has been lost has found a sympathetic ear among people on both sides of the political spectrum and contributed to the pledge of President Clinton to end welfare as we know. The welfare reform be placed lifetime limitation on accessing different kinds of welfare benefits, increased eligibility standards for most households, and required that many benefit receiving households participate in work-related activities. Now, the cash grant and labor supply. In-kind and cash transfer programs are compared in their impacts on labor supply. It's demonstrated that labor supply is higher under an in-kind transfer program. If in-kind transfers and ledger are hex substitutes, ledger is normal and in-kind transfers are over-provided. It's further though shown that under these conditions, a $1 increase in kind coupled with a $1 cut in cash transfers increase tax revenue. Finally, the paper provides that weak separability of preferences between ledgers and other goods, in addition to anomaly of ledgers and normally and over provision of in-kind transfers is also sufficient to ensure a higher level of labor supply under in-kind transfers. Here is the figure show us the effect of a cash grant on work instead. A take it or leave it cash grant of $500 per month moves the workers from point B to point G and encourage the worker to leave the labor force. So if we say here the worker take $500 and the hours of leisures move to 110, so no need to work, I guess. As we said before, figure 240 shows the effect of cash grant on labor opportunities. The budget line is provided by FE in the absence of the program. The impact of welfare on labor supply. The labor supply and other work incentive effect of welfare programs have long been a central concern in economic research. Work has also been an increasing focus of policy reforms in the US, culminating with a number of major policy changes in 1990s, whose intent was to increase employment and earnings levels of welfare recipients and other disadvantaged individuals. This paper reviews the economic research on the topics, covering both the theoretical models that have been developed as well as the empirical findings from econometric studies of the effects of extensive welfare program on labor supply. Because welfare recipients can work for every dollar earned on the job market, the value of the cash grant is often decreased by some defined value. For example, until 1996, the AFDC grant was decreased by 67 cents per dollar received by the woman on the labor market. Here we go, this figure 215 shows us the effect of a welfare program on hours of work. So figure 215 show us the budget line which this form of welfare system produce. The budget line is given by FE in the absence of the program, and the woman will select the package of consumption given by point B. Afterwards, she will spend 70 hours of leisure and work 14 hours. Here, the welfare reform and labor supply. The theory suggests that welfare systems are generating disincentives to function. Nonetheless, many of the studies that analyzed the effect of pre-1996 welfare program usually found that the AFDC plan reduced labor supply by 10 to 50% from the amount of work effort that would have been expected in the absence of the system, and labor supply elasticity values generally fall in line with the consensus estimates described above. There was also a lot of interest in assessing the effect of the time limits on involvement in welfare. A main flora provision restricts the period of time that families will obtain financial aid over their lifetime to 60 months, and several states have used their power to set even shorter deadline. And here time limits have the greatest effect on the level of involvement by females with small children in welfare. All other things equal, the prevalence of time limits decreases family welfare participation, where the youngest child is 3 years of age, by around 8 percentage points compared to family welfare participation, where the youngest child is 10 years of age. Now, the earned income tax credit. The earned income tax credit, as we say EITC, offers an alternate solution to raising the economic status of low income individual. This program began in 1975 and has since been greatly expanded. Find a household consisting of a working mother with the two eligible children to explain how the earned income tax credit works. For example, in 2005, this woman could receive a tax credit of up to 40% of her earnings so long as she earned less than $11,000 a year, resulting in a $4,400 maximum credit. There will be additional credit available as long as she received between $11,000 and $40,370. The credit will start phasing out after hitting the $14,370 mark. Specifically, every additional dollar received reduces the credit by 21.06 cents. This calculation means that if the woman receives $35,263, the credit disappears entirely. And this is the figure for EITC and the budget line. This figure shows us the effect the budget line intrudes a number of kinks into the incentive set for the worker. The statics presume the worker has no non-labor profits. The worker faces the straight budget line provided by FE, as we can see here from this figure of the EITC. So how does the EITC affect labor supply? Here is figure 270. Different planes highlight a verify of potentials. In figure 270A, this one, in the absence of EITC program, the worker will not be in the labor force. The increase in net was associated with the EITC draws the woman in the labor force, and by switching to point R, is maximize her value. here is the individual would be in the labor force even if the EITC at point P, as we can see from the figure, were not in a place. The annual income of this worker means that the EITC creates an impact on wages without affecting net salary. In switching point R, the worker maximizes her value, so she would like work less hours, of course. And here, in the absence of the EITC at the point P, the individual will work a great number of hours. The EITC reduce its net salary, and by cutting hours and going to the NIC at point R, it maximizes its usefulness. So now the labor supply over the life cycle. Up to this level, our labor supply model analyzes the decisions on how to work and how many hours to work from the point of view of a worker who allocates his time in a single cycle and who, for several years, ignores the possibility that he would have to make similar choices continuously. In reality, since consumer and leisure decisions are made over the entire working life, today workers can trade some leisure time in exchange for tomorrow extra consumption. For example, a person who currently devoted a lot of time to his job can save some of the extra earnings and use this saving to increase his future consumption of products. As a result, an evolutionary increase in wages alters the price of leisure but does not alter the value of the overall opportunity available at the worker's disposable over his life cycle. Here in figure 218, the life cycle path of wages and hours of typical worker. Suppose we know that our life cycle age earning profile takes on the prices shape illustrated in figure 218. As we can see, the fact that our wage rises slightly from age 37 to age 38. Therefore, that disparity in the amount of the two wages levels create an impact on the profits unless the effects on income are higher enough. The approach to the life cycle implies a link not only between wages and working hours, but also between the levels of wage and participation in the labor force. Here, the models of cycle estimation of life cycle models and labor supply over the business cycle. Here we have two things: the added impact effect and the depressed worker impact effect. Now, the decline in work attachment among older workers. There has been a marked drop in labor force participation among older men. It's hard to argue that the increasing propensity for early retirement is linked to the deteriorating health of this particular age group. However, at the same time that their labor market attachment was weakening, the life expectancy of white men aged 15 rose from 22 to 29.2 years between 1939 and 2007. The decline on work attachment is explained with some reasons. One, uh, pension benefits. Two, disability program. Three, the social security earning test. This table tells us the impact of disability benefits on labor supply in Canada. The social security earnings test. Many workers who consider themselves retired continue to work, perhaps in a part-time job. We can explain earning test with an example. in ABD returns between the ages of 65 and 69 who receive Social Security benefits could have earned up to $70,000 per year without affecting their retirement benefits. Here's the impact of the Social Security earning test on hours of work. There is no direct relation between earning test and labor force. Uh, Now, the labor demand. The labor market outcomes, however, depends on not only on the willingness of workers to supply their time to work activities, but also on the willingness of firms to hire here those workers. We know turn therefore to a decision of the demand side of the labor market. We begin the study of labor demand by specifying the firm's production function. The production function describes the technology that the firm uses to produce goods and services. And we have this table for the margin and average product for labor, holding capital constant, of course. This number of workers employed, and this is the output here, and, and the marginal product and average product, value of marginal product, and value of average product. And in this figure, 3/1 graphs the data in our example to illustrate the assumption that are typically made about the shape of the production function. The total product curve, this curve describes what happened to output as the firm hires more workers. The total product curve is absolutely upward sloping. This number of worker and here the output. Profit maximization. To analyze the hiring decision made by the firm, we make an assumption about the firm's behavior. In particular, the firm's objective is to maximize its profits. The firm's profits are given by this equation. Profits equal to PQ minus EW minus RK. The employment decision in the short run. We have here the value of marginal product formula and the value of the average product given by this formula. The firm's hiring decision in the short run. This is the figure that um, the geometric relationship between the marginal and average curves in figure 3.2 is identical to the relationship we discussed earlier. The short run demand curve for labor. This demand curve tells us what happened to the firm's employment as the wage changed. Holding capital constant, the construction of the short-run labor demand curve is presented in Figure 3.3, which draws the relevant downward sloping protein of the firm's value of marginal product curve, or VMPE. Initially, the wage is $22 and the firm hires 8 workers. If the wage falls to 18, the firm hires 9 workers. The short-run demand curve for labor, therefore, is given by the value of the marginal product curve because the value of the marginal product of labor declines as more workers are hired. It must be the case that a fall in the wages increases the number of the workers hired. Here is the short-run demand curve for the industry, and this formula for it, the elasticity, the percentage change in employment divided by the percent change in the wages. And this figure for the firm's output decision. The employment decision in the long run, the firm's capital in the long run is not fixed, and firms maximize profit by choosing both how many workers to hire and how much plant and equipment to invest in. So here it is the isoquant curve. Isoquant curve describes the possible computation of labor and capital that produce the same level of output and describe the production function. Um, In this figure, show us the isoquant labeled Q0 give all the capital labor. And the slope of the isoquant is given by delta K divided by delta E equal minus marginal product E divided by marginal product K. And this is called as marginal rate substitution. Now the ISO cost lines. Uh, ISO cost line firm's costs of production are given by C equal to W key plus R key. That are the price of the capital and W is the worker. In this figure, the line connecting all the various combination of labor and capital that the firm could hire with a cost outlay of $0 is called an ISO cost line. And ISO cost line gives the menu of different combination of labor and capital that are equally costly. The slope of the ISO cost line is given by this formula, K equal to C divided by R minus W times E divided by R. The cost minimization. In this figure, a firm minimizes this cost of production Q0 on units of output by using the capital labor combination at point P, where the isoquant is tangent to the isocost. Isocost line is tangent to the isoquant curve where the point P. The firm can produce Q0 units of output using other capital labor combinations such as point A and B. The slope of the isoquant is equal to slope of the isoquant. The marginal rate substitution is equal to the ratio of the prices. The long-run demand curves for labor. The impact of the wage reduction holding constant intentional cost outlay at C0, a wage reduction flattens the isocost curve if the firm were to hold the initial cost outlay constant and $0. In this figure 3/9, show us the firm uses 75 units of capital and 25 workers to produce the Q0 units of output. Note that the cost outlay associated with the producing this level of output equal $0. And the firm would move from point P to point R. The wage reduction increases the firm's employment from 25 to 40 workers and increase output from Q0 to new Q0. Now, the impact of wage reduction on the output and employment of a profit maximization firm A. This is a firm output decision and firm hiring decisions. In this figure, the long-run demand curve for labor at the initial wage of W0, the firm hired 25 workers when the wage fell to W1. The firm hired 15 workers. We will now show that the long-run demand curve for labor must be downward sloping. Substitution and scale effects. We have two effects. One of them, the scale effects and substitution effects. And both of the substitution and scale effects induce the firm to hire more workers as the wage falls. And this is the formula for the long run elasticity for labor demand, the percentage changes in employment divided by percentage change in the wage. The short and long run demand curves for labor. In the long run, firms can adjust both capital and labor and can fully take advantage of change in the price of labor. In the short run, the firm is stuck with a fixed capital stock and cannot adjust its size easily. This table for employment effects of overtime regulation in California. And the elasticity of substitution. We have two of substitution, perfect substitutes and perfect complements. The elasticity of substitution between capital and the labor formula is elasticity of substitution equal to percent change in K divided by E over percent change in W divided by R.